Hello folks, my name is Josh Taylor and I'd like to welcome you to the 12th Annual Telling Tales Festival and our first ever virtual gathering. Whether you are a veteran fan who has been to the festival or whether this is your very first time joining us, we are so happy to see how stories connect us, no matter how far apart we live. Speaking of where we live, the Telling Tales Festival happens in a place where people have lived and told stories for thousands of years. It is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Neutral peoples. Today, it is home to the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Six Nations of the Grand River, and to many other Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We recognize our responsibility to learn about their rich history so that we can better understand our roles as caretakers, neighbors, and friends. With a good heart and mind, we honor the sacred Indigenous tradition of storytelling by presenting our program today. Miigwech, Nyawe, and thank you. Hi everyone, Josh again. This session is for teens and adults who have dreams of one day publishing their very own children's book. Is that you? We are going to learn from industry insiders about the process of getting published. Did you know that there is an organization that exists to help aspiring adults to network and learn the craft from each other, and it's called CANSCAIP, Canadian Society of Children's Authors, Illustrators, and Performers. We have invited the president of CANSCAIP to moderate this session, Sharon Jennings. Sharon has written over 70 books for young people, picture books, chapter books, novels for reluctant readers, mid-grade novels, and screenplays. Based in Toronto, Canada, she teaches at the Toronto School Board, works as a freelance editor and manuscript reviewer, and gives workshops and speeches across the country. Sharon enjoys reading, spending time with her family, and her big puppy, AJ.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. I hardly recognize myself, but I'll take it. Welcome to all of our viewers. This is a panel discussion put on by Telling Tales for those of you who are interested in writing or illustrating for children and young people. So we hope that we answer a lot of your questions and that you learn a lot. We have a wonderful panel. So I'll get started and ask each of them to introduce themselves briefly. And Naseem, I'll begin with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naseem Hrab, and I am the author of the book Weekend Dad, which is a picture book illustrated by Frank Viva. And I also work in children's publishing. So I am the Associate Publisher Creative at KidsCan Press.
Oh, that's terrific. I know you'll bring a lot of information to this discussion. And Jennifer, I'll go to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Maruno. I am the author of Until Niagara Falls, my latest novel of historical fiction. And I'm a writer, a reader, a researcher, and a presenter.
Thanks, Jennifer. Paul, I'll squeeze you in between the women here if you want to go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Covello, and I am an author and illustrator of picture books. My two newest books are I Am a Beaver and I Am a Polar Bear. And yeah, I've also worked in publishing, and I am currently the art director at Anik Press.
That's great. Thank you very much. And Sarabeth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarabeth Holden. I am the author of Please Don't Change My Diaper, a picture book illustrated by Emma Peterson. I am an entrepreneur. I'm co-owner of Red Tape Brewery in Toronto. I'm also the founder and president of the Toronto Inuit Association. And I have two little boys, Raymond and Jackson, who inspired my picture book.
Thank you very much. Sarabeth, I'll stay with you and just ask you to tell us something about how you got interested in being writing and publishing, and just a little bit about your journey to get there.
My son Raymond has a very strong personality, and from a very young age, he really made it clear that he did not want to have his diaper changed. So I would always tell him stories and sing songs, always made up, as we climbed the stairs to try and get him to have his diaper changed. And one day I was like, that sounds really good. I should write that down. And So I was like, maybe I should look into this. So that's where my journey started, as I kind of explored how to publish this book.
And did you, how long did it take you to get it written and published?
I believe it took the whole process pre-COVID was about 18 months. Post-COVID, it's been almost 2 years. So I wrote the story, and there were many iterations around it, and I read it aloud to my biggest critics, everyone in my family and all of my friends, asking for honest feedback. And then once I did that, I sent a manuscript into a publisher who I had been in contact with through some of my nonprofit work, and said, "Hey, I have a manuscript. Is there any chance you could take a look at this and describe to me how I would submit it and how I would go about this process?" So after I submitted it, after getting some submission guidelines, and after a few months, I heard back and got some feedback and jumped into the editing process. I learned a lot about this whole process. So, there's editing, and then illustration, sketches before the actual illustrations happen, input on the illustrations, and then finalizing that. So that the whole process really took about 18 months. After that, because I'm Inuit, we're translating it into Inuktitut. So this is the next step that we're doing right now. We're reviewing the translation of Inuktitut and getting ready to publish that version. So my Inuktitut is quickly improving.
That's terrific. Just your comment about listening to your son, I think all of us would say the importance of being alert to story ideas when they're right in front of us, because if we're around kids at all, they'll say things, and we don't always realize that this could be a terrific story. So congrats to you. Jennifer, you had a different route into publishing. Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
I came into publishing through education. I was a JKK, grade 1, grade 2 kindergarten teacher, and then I became a primary consultant for the board. And the other day I sat down and thought, I think I'm going to calculate how many stories I've actually read out loud to kids. And I had a policy of 4 stories a day. So I read 4 stories a day for the average school year of 198 days, times 32 years of teaching, because I left the classroom and went into administration. So I think I read out loud almost 30,000 books over my teaching career. Now, you would think I would know exactly what a story is then. Like, I've read 30,000 stories, right? But I entered publication through writing lesson plans, working for Addison Wesley. But we did come up with a really unique program of mathematics in which we linked mathematics to a kid's picture book. And that was called Explorations in Early Childhood Education. And that was with Addison Wesley. So I was still writing lessons, though. I wasn't actually writing a story. I didn't write my first story until I retired, and I was published in Ladybug magazine. And that was really, really exciting, even though it took 2.5 years to see one story in print, and I got $90 US for an entire 2 years worth of work. So it was interesting. But I came through the back door reading a lot of stories before I actually wrote a story.
So just to underline that, you would suggest that anyone interested in writing for children read children's books?
Oh yes. For sure. 40,000.
Minimum.
Thank you. Naseem, you and Paul came into publishing because you work in publishing. So can you add anything to what they've said? Just something about your...
Yeah, I mean, my experience was a bit different in the sense of, I knew a lot of people in publishing because I had worked in different areas in publishing for, I think, about 7 years before I actually submitted a manuscript. So I kind of learned about, how editorial feedback works, how the whole process works before I got in, and, a bit different. I wanted to be anonymous when I submitted, so I submitted my first manuscript and actually my third manuscript under pen names, just because I wanted, to be sure that I was being published based on, you know, the how good the story was versus knowing people. So, you know, I think it's just as hard to work in publishing and get published as it is to have no contacts. It's that most publishing companies only do about, you know, anywhere between 1 and, you know, 40 books a year, and at least in Canada, and you know that's the odds aren't very good of getting published.
I think it's important to let our viewers know that it is the quality of the manuscript that is important, that our editors and publishers get so many manuscripts in, and they're really looking for that very well-written story.
Yeah, to be wowed by the writing, I think is what they're all looking for. Yeah.
Paul, do you have anything to add to this conversation?
Yeah, so I started working in publishing as well, and it was for a pretty big publishing house. So, you know, I was able to see children's books from all around the world, right? And it's kind of funny, up to that point, I didn't have a ton of interest in illustrating books for kids. But I was, you know, working there as sort of doing, you know, graphic design, advertisements, that kind of thing. And I think like after a couple of years, I was just kind of tired of just promoting other people's books. So I was actually sort of developing an idea for my first book it was actually like a short film. I didn't even envision it as a book, weirdly. And yeah, working at a publishing house, you know, I was just lucky to just show that to, you know, some people working there, and they kind of convinced me that, you know, that should be a book actually. And yeah, it took me, so even from like just initial interest until like I was finished my first book, I think it took well over a year. Like now, you know, after a couple of books, you sort of get used to that process. But, you know, it was like a year of like revisions and my art style changing and making it into sort of the best book that it could have been.
Like you, Paul, and Naseem, I also got into publishing because I worked in a textbook publishing company. So I knew a lot about what's expected and the process of putting a book together and publishing. But for our viewers out there who do not have our jobs, Jennifer, I'll ask you first. What would you suggest people do, or how can they get the information that some of us already have because of our careers? What advice would you give to someone starting out?
Well, I guess you asked me because I'm a former teacher, right? And I really do think that education is what you need to get to find out exactly what makes a good story. There are so many places you can go. I mean, you can take courses online, you can join up with the Humber College, you know, there's just so many places you can go. I took a course through the Institute of Children's Literature, and in those days there was no online. I used to get this brown package back with my story in it and Post-its all over it and things like that, send it back and get it back and forth. It was kind of, you know, a long process. But the thing is, you really have to know the craft. And if you're really interested, you should join CANSCAIP as a friend. And come along and meet the professionals and understand what it is that they do, because you'll hear a lot of stories about how the craft is formed, and it is a craft.
Sarabeth, do you have anything to add for tips for aspiring writers where they can get support?
I think we talked about it earlier, you know, just look for that inspiration every day. As if you're around children and you're reading the books or you're spending time with them. Walking down the street the other day, my 2-year-old pointed at a cat and said, "The cat's in the boat. The cat's in the boat under the table." And I was like, could that be a story? So now my mind is just kind of going. And I think, you know, take a look at your bookshelves and where would your book fit in with those books, and then explore the publishers that you see, and take a look at their websites. A lot of publishers have submission guidelines on their website, so I think that could be a really great place to start.
Thank you. Naseem, do you have anything here, like just advice for?
Yeah, I mean, I I learned how to write a story from taking improv classes. So I think that there's all sorts of ways into learning how to write that aren't necessarily, precisely through writing. I think that's a great way. I think, studying the books you love and the books you don't love, and maybe rewriting the books you don't love and fixing them in the way you think they should be fixed. Using that as an exercise. I think Sarabeth made a point earlier about going to your harshest critics. I think, don't go to people hoping, to hear that your manuscript or your work is perfect. Don't go to those people. Go to the people who will, give you suggestions, great feedback in terms of how to make your manuscript stronger. Because especially nowadays, everything's moving so fast. So, the better shape your manuscript is when you initially send it to a publisher, the more likely that they'll pick it up versus a manuscript that needs, that's a great idea, but needs a ton of work. So.
And Paul? Any best advice?
Yeah, I was just going to add, so I'm an author and an illustrator, so if there's anybody who can do sort of both things, is interested in illustrating their own writing, like Naseem said, like kind of having like something like a proof of concept, or a really tight sample of your art style and what the book will look like, and just lots and lots and lots of ideas too. I feel like you need like a ton of ideas that go into books, so you'll have to throw away a lot, but the more that you come with, it's going to make the process a lot easier and fun.
I think that from what I'm hearing, belonging to groups like CANSCApe or joining the Canadian Children's Book Centre helps you understand how the industry works. And as someone, I think Jennifer, you said, it is a craft. And you don't have to do it alone, and there is lots of help out there. So for anyone watching who is serious about this, please join all these support groups and networks. Sarabeth, I want to ask you, how many revisions did you do on your story before you felt it was ready to go? You sent your baby out into the world. Not your real babies, the book.
I don't know if I can count. There were the on paper revisions, and then the on the computer revisions. There's a lot of revising and just trying to, my book rhymes, so trying to get those rhymes in there. And so over 2 months, let's say once a week. So let's do an estimate of 8 times. And then once I submitted it, and immediately the publisher was like, we want to do this, but we want to change this. That was a pretty big thing. And then the real editing started.
Yes, that's a good point, that when we feel like we've done 10 drafts and it's perfect, and then it gets contracted, you find out that that was considered your first draft, and you get to do 5 more with the publishing company. So I've heard a lot of people starting out are very worried that this is their voice and it's being interfered with. So again, to understand the way the industry works is publishers want to make it the strongest story possible, and you will receive further guidance in-house, and we have to be professional about that. But when did you finally send yours out, Sarabeth? Did you put it in a mailbox or old school, or hit send?
Mailbox. So it was after I always look to my mom, because I run things by my mom all the time. And once my mom was like, that's really good. And it's just kind of like that mom tone and my mom would always tell me, like, you need to floss your teeth before you go out. She's that kind of mom. And so once I read it to her and she said it was good, I said, okay, I'm ready. That's when I was ready to hit send. So, and that was after probably 6 or 7 people who gave me honest feedback.
Thank you. So once we've sent that manuscript out, there's always the danger of it not being accepted, even though we know how brilliant it is. And so Jennifer, would you like to speak to, I hate using the word reject it, we'll go with turn down or not accept it. Would you like to talk about that, Jennifer?
Well, it's interesting. I don't like the word rejection either. Naseem, you mentioned you go through improv. I did an awful lot of local theater and dancing and things like that. And to me, it's more like an audition that you're sending your story in for, because it's not necessarily a question that they're rejecting it and saying, well, you know, we don't like it. It's maybe it isn't right good for this part. Like you might be good for another part or whatever. So you've got to understand that it's kind of like an audition. The first time I got a rejection letter, I was so stunned. Again, old school, in the mail. I was so stunned that someone actually read it. They'd actually had time to write back to me, and they actually made a few comments on it. And I hung on to this rejection letter going, wow, I got rejected. This is so great. And everybody's like, what do you mean this is great? I said, no, it's a big publishing house. It was, you know, in the States, and they took time out to write a little note and say, you know, just not right for us right now, but maybe keep sending things in. And I had this basket on my shelf that I hadn't figured out what to do with it with. So I laid this rejection letter in the basket as if to say, you know, this is the first of many to come, and I have a spot for my rejection letters. You know? So I was very honored to get a rejection letter.
Well, thank you. Yes, we've all, well, I don't know about Naseem and Paul. Maybe you didn't get rejection letters. But, and one thing I'd like to point out to our viewers is that even when you are accepted and you are published, it doesn't mean that you will be accepted with your second story. The publisher may feel it's not strong enough. It's not for us. And then you have to keep sending it out and not lose faith in yourself. And that's why you should belong to the support groups like CANSCApe, she mentioned once again. Naseem, what would be, if manuscripts landed on your desk, what would you say is a really good story? What would catch your attention?
Well, I think the refrain, you know, around the office is usually and it's going to sound so vague, but, you know, great writing, number one, feels rare. So, you know, to everyone's point about it being a craft and, you know, to really, really ensure that your story, whatever it is well told, is important. And then the other thing I think you often hear is that it's surprising. And I think when people say surprising, they mean that it's unique. Whether it's in the way that the story is told or what the story is about, that it feels fresh, it feels unlike, you know, everything else that could be out there. And often, you know, people ask about what are trends or what's coming out. And, you know, I unfortunately often roll my eyes at that question because I'm like, why would you want your story to be like everything else? And whatever everything else is has already come out, you know, 2 years at least ahead of your story. So by the time you submit your story, people are kind of over, you know, vampires or whatever, unicorns, maybe, I don't know. You know, so it's just, I think it's really important to do the thinking to make your story well-crafted and original, I think is ultimately what most publishers will say in a vague but meaningful way.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. One area that's very confusing to new people is if I've written my story, do I have to submit the art with it? Can I draw my own art? And do I have to hire someone? So Paul, will you address that for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you want to give it a shot to submit some illustrations with your manuscript, I think, you know, an editor would consider that. But most of the time, I think publishers want, if it's a picture book, to find an illustrator on their own that they're really happy with, that matches the story very well. So yeah, unless you really do want to be an artist, yeah, I don't know if you should submit anything.
And don't hire someone.
No.
Yeah.
I've heard that, you know, at our CANSCApe meetings, people will say, well, I want to do both. And maybe they are writers and illustrators, but we've encouraged them to, for your first book, to choose your best strength. Mm-hmm. You know, and once you get in the door and they like your art or they like your story, then you can talk to them about your other, you know, career choice and see whether you can go forward down the road as both author and illustrator. Is that correct, Paul or Naseem?
My experience is kind of different. I mean, my books are kind of all in a series, and I don't know, the ideas kind of just like sort of follow each other one after the other, like a numbers book, an alphabet book, a book about animals, that type of thing. So I guess it really depends. I mean, of course, when you have something published, then you have a relationship with the editor and the publisher and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's not always the case. Your first book they could really love and then not really be interested in your second one, or something happens in the company and there's new people, all sorts of things can happen, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say if you're not, professionally, maybe not professional is strong, if you're not trained as an artist, I don't know that I would recommend you submit artwork along with your manuscript, unless, you've been doing it for a while. But you could also, as an author, you can put in illustration notes, within your manuscript that could potentially capture that part of your vision, at least for when you submit it.
Sarabeth, did you, I don't know who illustrated your book. How did you feel when you were matched up with an illustrator?
So Naseem said you can include illustration notes. So that's what I had done. I said, because there were certain parts of the story where I pictured this tiny little bald baby with 2 front teeth. I said, I put that in my notes. And I'd also like it to be wearing this kind of hat because it's a winter theme. So it was nearly a year into the process once I found out the name of my illustrator. So the publisher had matched the illustrator. And so then I did the thing that everyone does in the 21st century. I Googled her and checked out all of her work on her Instagram. Her name is Emma Peterson. And I was like, oh my goodness, she's perfect. And then I got the sketches and I cried. And I'm going to cry right now because I still, like, that moment is so exciting. Whenever you see how this illustrator has perfectly created these images to go along with the story that you put so much work into, and you just imagine that moment that you're going to show it to your mom or whoever is the most important person in your life that, helped you get there. And yeah, it was thrilling.
I'm just being mindful of our time. So does anyone, Naseem, do you want to speak about agents? People always say, do I need an agent to get started? Just very briefly, do you want to address that?
Sure. Well, I just think, it is just as hard to find an agent as it is to get published. And I think especially in the early stages, you may want to, if you are able to get published, you may want someone to help review your contract, but I don't know that you necessarily need an agent. So my recommendation is, going back to the basics, as we said, of networking and going to CANSCApe meetings where you will meet editors and people who work in publishing companies, and, being professional in that way or going to Packaging Your Imagination, which is the conference held by CANSCApe, where you could do, speed dating with editors, things like that. There's all sorts of contests, CANSCApe runs, as well as the writers union. So there's different ways to get in, I think, that don't necessitate, especially in the early stages, the need for an agent.
Good advice. We have talked about the support group. So Jennifer, I just wanted you quickly to mention your own writers group.
Yeah, we formed a group in Burlington, and Ian Elliott, of A Different Drummer, noticed that we came to support everyone's book launches, and we're always out in force. And so he named us the Burlington Authors Mafia. So we are BAM, the Burlington Authors Mafia. And there are 12 of us. And I'll tell you, through this COVID and through Zoom, it has kept us going, because we were meeting every second week at my house, and all I made was tea or coffee if anybody wanted anything, and we weren't into, different cakes and stuff like that. It was a question of reading out loud our work to each other and everyone commenting. And if you didn't read, you just came anyways to comment. The networking is phenomenal, but it's the authenticity of the comments that are so important. People really tell you. We've got 2 illustrators, Rebecca Bender and Suzanne Del Rizio, are in the group. So they'll often say, I can't see what you're saying. And the minute they say that as an illustrator, you go and pick up the pen, and pull that out, right? But we have, Sylvia McNichols in it, Jillian Chan's in it, Karen Bass is in it, all people, nominees that have won awards, all kinds of things. And it's an amazing group to meet. Right now we're meeting every second Tuesday. We'll probably go back when COVID leaves to just every second Tuesday. We're meeting every Tuesday right now to support each other.
And I know someone listening might say, well, yes, but you're all published authors or illustrators.
Oh, no, we have 2 people in it that aren't published yet.
Oh, however, you all did meet at CANSCApe or through the book center or some organization, and then became friendly and joined these support groups. So very quickly, we'll have a speed round. Just your last best piece of advice for someone. So Jennifer, you're on the screen. Do you have a hot tip?
My hot tip is to stick with it. Just stick with it. Just keep going. I mean, this book behind me, Until Niagara Falls, I wrote that 12 years ago. Nobody was interested in it. It was too kind. It was too soft. It wasn't, heavy enough. And now all of a sudden, oh, that book is so kind and soft and the world's so heavy and we need it. So, I mean, just stick with it. That's what you got to do.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, just one piece of advice. Yeah, similar to what Jennifer said. I mean, like, it's a lot of just, I think a lot of, writing or illustrating or anything with publishing is a lot of just like sitting in front of a desk and like making the time to do that work. That's like the hardest part for me, actually, just like getting to the desk. But once I get there, at least I'll do something, and something, will inspire me, or, be some piece of, idea for a book. But just getting to the desk and making the time to sit there is really important.
I think many of our colleagues call that bum in chair. Yeah. Sarabeth, what's your one big piece of advice, takeaway for this panel?
I like to say, reach for the stars and you'll land on the moon. So, dream big, do the work, and you're going to get somewhere. And you never know where it's going to be.
Thank you. And Naseem?
I think my big advice is don't be overly moralistic in your writing, and remember that reading and stories should be entertaining and fun. I mean, obviously there's room for education, but most picture books, it should be a joy and a pleasure to read for children and parents and teachers. Yeah.
I always tell people to remember who you're writing for and to have utmost respect for that young reader.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you, everyone. And I will just tell the people viewing this that doing this is one of my greatest pleasures. I am connecting with my colleagues and talking about what we do and what we love. And I thank you all for what you create and for being part of this panel. And I hope the viewers realize how much advice they got today. And I hope they reach out to all the support networks out there. And best of luck to everybody.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CANSCAIP. We are the Canadian Society of Children's Authors, Illustrators, and Performers, the largest organization in Canada supporting creative work for children and teens. You're welcome to join our friendly and inclusive CANSCAIP community. Are you working on writing, illustrating, or performing for kids? CANSCAIP offers professional development support for your creativity, for your craft, and for your business practice. You can join CANSCAIP as a member or as a friend. CANSCAIP was started in 1977. We've been supporting creators for more than 40 years. Across Canada, we include about 1,000 members and friends. Our monthly meetings feature expert speakers like publishers, editors, authors, illustrators, agents, and other professionals. We live stream and record our meetings and make them available across Canada. Our quarterly newsletter keeps you in the loop about what's happening with our members and friends in the Kidlit community, and that includes your news too. Every year, our Packaging Your Imagination conference, we call it PYI, presents top-notch speakers and sessions. live streaming and recording make PYI available all across Canada. Our webinars are presented by professionals with expertise in contracts, marketing, social media, grant applications, and more. We record all our webinars so you can watch them again. CANSCAIP does not rely on ongoing funding from government. Membership renewals and event registrations have kept us going since 1977. CANSCAIP is inclusive, respectful, supportive, professional, welcoming, and proudly Canadian. CANSCAIP, you are welcome to be part of our community.
Thanks for joining us, and remember to visit our website for more events and to upload your artwork, your writing, your videos, and your ideas to the Telling Tales Creativity Club. Telling Tales is all about the joy of discovering how stories connect us. Tell us what you thought of this episode by filling out the survey on the Telling Tales website, and you could win a book from one of today's authors. See you again.